Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Star Revelations for 2026 with the gorgeous Maria Jones and myself, Morgana Sophia. Welcome, Maria. Amazing to see you in this new year.
Absolutely. And we're recording this just as the storm is about to hit the UK. Storm, I think Giorgetti or something. I saw they were calling
Moretti,
it
I
this morning.
I think so. Not really sure. Big snowstorm.
Very excited. We're very excited.
Yeah, we are literally recording this, and just as we press record, I can just the rain is just about to start where I live here in the UK. So we're really harnessing the energy of this storm to bring you a bit of astrological magic for 2026.
Absolutely.
January is going to be pretty much the preparation month for February, which we're going to see the great conjunction with Saturnia and Neptunia meeting at 0 degrees of Aries. But before we get there, we have discussed that in previous podcasts and we are going to come back to it. But we really want today to look at January preparation, all the really juicy astrological aspects which are coming out of the woodwork, I really feel, as we experience the end of what has been a really poignant Neptune cycle. Just as Twinkle arrives at the same time.
Absolutely. She's saying, don't forget Jupiter in Leo.
We won't, Twinkle. We won't. I guess the
Yeah.
first thing we could start with then, Maria, on January is Lilith moving from Scorpio into Sagittarius. So she moved on the 20th of December. We kind of missed it because we were busy focusing on 2026 astrology just before the solstice as well. So shall we start with Lilith in Sag?
Absolutely. We better not keep Lilith waiting, hey?
I know.
We were just tuning in before we started recording, and I was just saying, I can see her, on her underworld throne with her big horns, with a big blazing Sagittarian fire behind her. And I think there was so much focus on Lilith in Scorpio because it's her natural home, but she kind of snuck into Sag a little bit, didn't she? But I feel like it's really important that we touch on the power of this transit because it's really complementary to the planets moving into Aries and then Jupiter coming into Leo later in the year. We've got this huge kind of fiery energy coming in. There's been a lot of talk about the fire horse, but in the astrology really does support that. So we were just touching on the element of fire, weren't we,
Oh, yes.
as well? Because Lilith is a slightly unpredictable and uncontrollable energy. And Aries is, the fire sign, the first fire sign, which is associated with the dragon energy or the first spark of fire. So we were just saying how fire can warm you or it can burn everything down. And I think it can be very destructive. And I think that's very much the case with Lilith in Sagittarius,
Mm.
because Sagittarius is the fire of belief. It's the fire of mind. And with the way the world currently is, I think it's going to really enhance this energy that we're seeing all around us, where people will literally die for their beliefs. And, with Neptune coming into Aries as well, we have this kind of fighting for the death of my, religious ideologies as well. So I think it's really interesting to reflect on with this transit what we believe in.
Mm.
What do we believe to be true? And is that a supportive energy, or is that something that we perhaps need to transmute or try and understand? Because Lilith can take us into our deep subconscious. And then a lot of the beliefs that we hold form part of our identity, especially religiously and spiritually. We identify ourselves through these beliefs or pathways that we choose to devote ourselves to. So for us to let them go can be a bit of like a death of the old self, which is why people become very defensive when they're presented with information that might counteract those beliefs. So Lilith is, really bringing all of this up to the forefront, I feel. And we have a really good interpretation of Lilith in Sagittarius, actually from this book, Living Lilith, which goes really deep into your Lilith astrology. So shall I read a little bit of that out?
Please do.
So this is a great description of Sagittarius from a feminine perspective in general, I think, as well. So it's quite long. Lilith shows her warrior nature in the sign of the Archer, with her sword of truth raised high and ready. These natives, so if you have this placement, but in general collectively, have a roaming heart, restless mind, and a tremendous thirst for adventure. Sagittarius is the sign of the truth seeker. So the ultimate truth is part of the great quest, the Holy Grail. And we know Aquarius is the Grail bearer. So what does it all mean? What is real? This Lilith position indicates an urgency for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, which is very interesting given the times that we are living in, where we're never quite told what is true. Legal issues can be complex, as Lilith in this sign seeks to align social law to cosmic law. So Sagittarius is about divine justice, is what we usually say. This quest is a never-ending story because there is no ultimate truth apart from the moment of being. Lilith in Sagittarius can tell a good story. Their version of truth can take on mythic proportions. They may oppose it on others for the sake of a cause, becoming the righteous dictator. Sounds familiar. Inflated to a sense of personal godhood, being above one's own laws, stepping boldly across one's own professed ethical lines. Lilith eventually forces one to walk the talk. When such high idealism takes the form of fundamentalism, it brings out the dark side of Lilith. She will eventually expose limited or corrupted belief systems. Lilith Sagittarian arrow pierces through lies and deception, especially those in your own soul. So this is really interesting, isn't it? Where are we lying to ourselves? We're so focused, aren't we, on projecting them outward. The politicians are lying to us, the media is lying to us, and they are, but that's the reflective of humanity's own state of delusion. So Lilith can instigate great discomfort and discontent with one's falsehoods, large and small. If we survive, we cannot fail to be impressed by the accuracy of her aim. Like Eros, with his arrows of love, Lilith in Sagittarius is the heavenly huntress with an erotic mind that is transparent, with no attachments or limiting concepts. Sounds good. With the Milky Way's galactic center in the region of Sagittarius, Lilith in the sign of the Archer aims cleanly towards this center point. Once there, we feel the inevitable tug of the great attractor, a power center that draws multiple galaxies into its heart. The dilemma can be how to encompass such expansive breadth and depth. How many angels dance on the head of an arrow tip? Lilith in Sagittarius imagines and reimagines. But there we go.
Oh, so much to unpack there on a personal level. I live with someone who is Lilith in Sag, just about to have his Lilith return. So that would be quite interesting. But when you were really talking about Sag being relating to legal issues and divine justice, obviously most people who are listening know that I've got a couple of law degrees and originally trained to be a lawyer. So got a lot of Sag in my chart. But as I'm kind of looking very objectively at things going on at the moment and the manipulation of legal systems, the people who are having to walk their own talk, who are very much in their own ego, who are manipulating natural laws and manipulating the laws of countries, I think, like you said earlier, the fire is either going to warm and create harmony, or it is going to burn the village down. And I can just see a lot of rumblings in the collective that this will potentially happen due to the fanaticism and dogmatic belief of leaders, but also the dogmatic belief of followers and people who are prescribed to a particular cause that actually will become incredibly destructive. And even, the dogmatic people seeking truth, that truth seeking itself will become incredibly disruptive. So I thousands of thoughts going on in my head at the moment, but this real expose, perhaps, of leadership and legal systems is the one thing that really is coming straight to my mind.
Absolutely. There is a certain orange politician who shall not be named who has a Sagittarius moon,
Yeah.
which is very interesting. So I think although the powers that be can manipulate the laws of men, no one escapes cosmic law. And I think this Lilith in Sagittarius really relates to our spiritual pathway and purpose as well, because Sagittarius, above all else, is searching for a meaning in life. It's searching for a pathway of purpose, which is why it becomes so attached to its beliefs. And I know you mentioned before we started recording about Lilith and Sagittarius also, bringing a lot of exposure to, the spiritual communities, the gurus and the leaders and the teachers as well, because this is what Sagittarius is. It's this kind of teacher archetype. It's, quite often somebody who is regarded as somebody that carries a lot of wisdom and is put on a pedestal. So I think a lot of people might become a little bit disillusioned around what they believed in, or I think a lot of people can also project a lot towards people who are in teaching positions and maybe expect them to be something more than human as well.
I
So I think there's
absolutely,
that kind of recognition, isn't there? Of
yeah,
everything is light
I
and shade.
Yeah, I really, really agree with that actually. And when I was doing a bit of research last night, the phrase that, and I can't remember the blog, I really wish I could reference it, but Lilith trusts herself and not other teachers. So she is here to confront the guru, essentially, to expose self-prophets, self-righteous figures, and institutions who use their wisdom to control and manipulate. And if we really look at, particularly within the spiritual community, because the place you and I have been in for a long time, there's this. and I've seen it for a long time, but there's almost like a shakedown of, everything's gone into a plan and it's kind of been sieved as to who is truly speaking from the heart, from a place of love and compassion, and those who are spewing stuff out because at the end of the day they are able to control and manipulate people by, for example, telling them that they need another galactic download, that they must attend a particular workshop in order to activate galactic encoding, or to reclaim um, Visions of Atlantis. That's an excellent band, by the way, Visions of Atlantis. But people who are really becoming quite guru-like and are using this to really manipulate what people think and what people feel. And then we get into that kind of new age trauma that you and I were talking about as well, that you have to do things in a particular way, and if you don't, and if you aren't all love, light, sparkles and unicorn glitter all the time, things are going to go this sort of um, false positivity, this toxic performative spirituality. Lilith and Sag isn't going to like it. And I really do feel that there's going to be a huge expose of this, whether it's collectively and we have a sort of Doreen Virtue moment, or actually whether it's just personally and people suddenly just start voting with their feet. I think it's going to play out because Lilith's there until September. So, December to September is a long time. A week is a long time in politics, but, you know, 10 months of Lilith in Sagittarius, it may feel like an eternity.
Absolutely. And I think any good teacher, any true teacher leads you back to yourself. So
Mm.
for me, the idea has always been to make more teachers, you know, because we are all individual, aren't we? We're all that one strand in the web. We all have a different tone to sound. So when you're in a community or a space which requires you to follow a certain doctrine, that can actually limit you a little bit too. Which is why I love astrology, because when you're teaching astrology, you can see everyone's soul map laid out quite clearly. So you can see, how they can apply that to their life and who they can become. So I think that's, the limitless side of Sagittarius coming through a little bit there, because I have to be very careful to be on the right side of Sagittarius because my South Node is there, and that's a place where you can easily go into the shadows of a sign. So, it's something I always have to be aware of, and thank the goddess she always sends me Geminis to make me look at the other polarity, to embrace that other side. But I think, there is this strong push from the cosmos this year with all of these fire sign energies that calls us into self-leadership, self-responsibility, because that Pisces energy, which is still kind of lingering as we're talking at the moment, as we've said so many times since we've been recording these podcasts, you're looking for your answers from somebody else. You're blaming other people, or you're looking for them to save you. The Aries, Sagittarius, Leo, all of these fire sign energies, it's having none of it. It's really having none of it. So if you want to thrive, you have to start taking responsibility. And I think, yeah, the words that's coming to me is integrity, actually, with Lilith in Sagittarius. Are you really walking your talk or doing what you're teaching others to do? And I think there is a lot of pressure on people, who are in the sphere of spiritual teaching, because there is that expectation to be perfect. So, I like to, from the very beginning, I like to be as authentic as possible, because we're not perfect, definitely not.
You and I are definitely not perfect, love.
definitely not perfect. I'm always, it's an ongoing process of working on yourself, isn't it? And arguably, the more consciousness you gain, the more difficult things become, the bigger the test. So it's not an easy path, is it?
Not at all. And I think it's going to be really interesting. Those who are at the moment, I can almost see it. She's kind of offering us this really ornate kind of golden goblet of, are you going to drink the waters of self-sovereignty and step in as the kind of, the leaders of
Mm,
the Aquarian Aeon? You and I love to style ourselves as the women of the Aquarian dawn, after
yes,
the
that is
beautiful,
the
beautiful. But she's offering it. Are you going to drink it, or are you going to rely on somebody else? It's very much about, have you got the, oh, probably not like to say that. So have you got the ovaries to go and actually, stand in your own sovereignty and say, do you know what? I've learned so much from you and I'm really grateful for you as a teacher, but now I'm moving on. And that's what you and I love sometimes, is that people who have learned from us and move on. But ultimately, our role as teachers and astrologers is to bring you back to yourself and who you are and
absolutely.
the highest version of yourself. So I suspect it's going to be a really interesting ride and quite choppy for some people. And I guess the invitation is, are you going to do it? Are you going to embrace that sovereignty, or are you going to wait for someone else to save you? Because I don't think they are.
And a good teacher won't do that. They'll guide you back to yourself. Um, they'll always guide you inwards.
Absolutely. And the one
The
thing I was just reflecting on as well, how, I mean, you and I obviously are perfect yet a work in progress. How we were chatting before about the way that we talk, the way that we see the astrology, and how we are now embracing our doom laden prophecies. Lilith in Sag.
Absolutely. So I think when I was mentioning, I think it's really interesting that we have our south nodes in Sagittarius, but we also have the asteroid Cassandra conjunct our south nodes exactly. And the asteroid Cassandra represents the kind of famous prophetess from the stories of the Trojan War, where she was trying to tell people that Troy was going to burn and nobody believed her. That was Apollo's curse on her, I think. But that's a bit of a patriarchal myth that we'd probably have to spend a whole episode unpacking. But Cassandra is that energy of the prophetess that nobody wants to listen to.
Yeah.
On the things that people don't want to hear. And I always feel, that is a little bit of our role with this podcast and with astrology, because although we don't want to perpetuate any hopelessness, I think, we also have to really look at the possibility that there are multiple timelines that humanity can choose at the turnings of the aeons. And we've not chosen so well the past few times. We've not chosen so well in our previous incarnations. So with this Aquarian energy, and Aquarius and Sagittarius have so many similarities, I always feel.
Mm.
We have to, really make people aware of the shadows that can be the pitfalls. And one of those pitfalls is, really falling into the hysteria or the hive mind. And when we are in our sovereignty, we're much less likely to do that. If we've got a strong sense of who we are, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, we're much less likely to be blown about on these winds of chaos.
Absolutely, and it is the winds of chaos. I mean, are literally whipping up at the moment, and kind of metaphorically being whipped up by the mainstream media, by social keyboard warriors, by whoever, wants to have, a bit of a flame, essentially. Someone is literally, throwing a hand grenade in every day. So you kind of become a cork in the ocean if you are able to just let it kind of wash over you and keep that really, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? You're keeping a firm center and cane stable, yet just allowing yourself to have a little bit of sway and movement, but you know who you are and you are just setting your course and going for it. And I think, yeah, I was just thinking about kind of the collective hive mind and the collective hypocrisy that we've got at the moment. And do you want to fall into that, saying one thing, doing the other? Or are you just going to be really bold and audacious and very Sag-like and just walk your own way? Very Aquarian as well, actually. We are in choice point times and we can choose the path once again. But, as the, kind of prophetesses, it's that kind of, well, here's the shadow side. You can take that if you want it, but we would strongly guide you down to the highest frequency you can. But at the end of the day, we can only say, can't we? We can't make you do anything.
Absolutely. And I think the collective consciousness, it's a reflection of our own consciousness. So these kind of warlike energies, these chaotic like energies, the way that we work with them is through integrating our shadow self, is through elevating our consciousness. So you can have these beautiful visions as well of, the whole globe, lighting up like a fractal of people's heart lights when they're meditating, when they are connecting in with their higher consciousness, and that frequency is there too. And that's what we want to really amplify. But you can't get to those spaces of elevated consciousness without doing the hard shadow work. Which again, will bring me back to astrology. Look at your own Lilith placement, look at Saturn, look at Pluto, look at your South Node, see where you need to liberate yourself. And the more of us that do that in our own communities, the more we, create an atmosphere where the true Aquarian frequency can flourish. And I think, we're leading up to this Aquarian eclipse. So we've got Capricornia New Moon first, which I know we're going to talk about, but the first eclipse of the year is in Aquarius. The North Node's going into Aquarius in August this year. So, we're really being called to embrace this energy, this archetypical frequency of the star goddess, which is elevated consciousness. It's stellar consciousness. So how are we, working towards that in our daily life? Are we looking for somebody else to get us there? Are we, endlessly doom scrolling? Or are we actually becoming the oracle? Which again can be a very Pisces energy too. And we've got Neptune on the edge of Pisces, and we do kind of slander Pisces a little bit because we're talking about the end of the Piscean aeon. So we do slander her a little bit. But she also has this amazing archetypical frequency of the oracle. So it's becoming your own oracle. And I feel like with Neptune on the edge of Pisces, about to go into Aries again in a few weeks' time, isn't it now? 29th or 26th of January, I think.
26.
26. There is this amazing ability to sense the portents of the year ahead. So what we're seeing now happening in the collective is some glimpses and foreshadowings. And Neptune does rule over oil.
Wow. Interesting. Isn't that interesting, given what is going on collectively in the world at this moment in time? And I guess just before Neptune goes into Aries, which I think we want to chat about a little bit more, we have got that really powerful Capricorn New Moon, which to me is the kind of the opener, ready for that eclipse season, because the next new moon will be that powerful Aquarius eclipse, which for some people will be ushering in the year of the fire horse. What I'd say about that is yes, fire, remember, can warm or can burn. Horses can be delightful and horses can kick. Trust me. I've
We
been
were just
belted
making some
by
jokes
one
about
before.
horses.
I spent a lot of time around horses when I was younger. They can change mood. But this
Absolutely.
first new moon of the year is really powerful. And to me, it's quite important for what is to come. It's very much the month of really getting to grips with that Capricornian energy. How are we going to create order, long-term goals, solid plans? So it's not a kind of the new year, new me kind of goal setting. This is not just for the year. This for me is for the next however long we want it to be. It's for the next aeon essentially. But it's really about, for me, getting a solid plan and then sticking to that plan. It's quite a Saturnian moon. I was writing some notes down last night, and something that my yoga teacher used to say to me, who she learned off a mutual friend who was a numerologist: freedom within the framework. This new moon is very much about giving us a framework with rules and boundaries that ultimately offer us freedom. Freedom to be ourselves, to be self sovereign, to be deeply creative, but there's a foundation and structure to it. That was what that new moon was really saying to me as well. And I know we're going to chat about the astrology, but we've got Mars, Mercury, Luna, and Sol all at 28 degrees of Capricorn, all opposite Jupiter in Cancer. And then we've got Venus and Pluto conjunct in Aquarius. Oh, and by the way, they're all conjunct to Mars, Mercury, Luna, and Sol as well. So there's a massive pile up within kind of 5 degrees of each other in Capricorn and Aquarius. It's going to be quite juicy, I'd like to say. Trying, but
Absolutely.
juicy.
Mhm. Absolutely. I have a Capricorn moon lately and a lot of Aquarius type energy. My moon's in the 11th house and I've got an Aquarius rising. So for me, this is always one of my favorite times of the year. And I think that's a really great way of describing that kind of crossing of the threshold from Capricorn to Aquarius. It's, structure creates freedom. Structure creates freedom. And Aquarius, has that rebellious shadow. And if we tear down all of these old structures too quickly, we're going to find ourselves with more freedom than we can handle. We're going to find ourselves with
Well,
more autonomy than we can handle.
no, that would be
So,
great, but the amount of Scorpio that you put in our chart might say like, no, a little bit of structure.
absolutely. I think, there is this balance that has to be had because we've spent so long, giving our power away to these Capricornian structures and authorities. If we just burn it all down really quickly, you know, there's going to be absolute Aquarian chaos. So I would say our work is to start preparing to liberate ourselves, as much as we can. So that if there is, mass disruption on a global level, we're prepared. There's a sense of preparation there as well. And I think, since COVID, we all feel, don't we, constantly like we're living on the edge of something, like we're just waiting for the next thing to happen. So it's like, how can we be in that space of the unknown, but also not let that disrupt us from making long-term plans and visions for our life? Because we are in this collective kind of pressure cooker void space where we can almost put ourselves in limbo. So it's like kind of prepare for everything is the energy, I think, with that moon.
sort of
It's like
expect.
be prepared, but don't be in fear.
Yeah, I mean, expect the unexpected, and comes back down to I can't remember if it's one of us in guides or brownies. Always be prepared. You always have a little pocket. It was brownies. 10p for a phone, a handkerchief, a bit of string. You know, packet of polo mints. But it's the same kind of idea of just be aware, be prepared, but then forget about it. You've done what you needed to do. Go out. Go out and find yourself sovereignty, find your own freedom and find your own structure. But if the brown stuff hits the fan, there's a backup there for you. But you're not in that space of fear. So I twist that ever so slightly and say it's the goal setting and empire building new moon. Brackets. Just make sure you've got an extra packet of pasta and some loo roll in the cupboard. Close brackets.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking of Mars's involvement with that moon because what we've seen happen just recently with the oil,
Hmm.
Mars was conjunct the sun. So Mars tends to initiate these kinds of things.
Um, Obviously, being conjunct to Pluto would have some added intensity to the mixture, would it not?
Yeah, Mars conjunct Pluto. Let's
Let's open a bottle of wine now, shall we?
But anybody that knows astrology knows that that's very, very intense.
Yeah.
So, Mars conjunct Pluto, on that edge of Aquarius, it can be an energy which creates an obsessive desire for freedom, actually.
Interesting.
Um, so again, we always have to look at the polarities and the shadows because Aquarius is liberation, but also, that can very quickly tip over or be distorted into a shadow energy itself. So it's always about finding the equilibrium. But I think in our personal reality, global stuff aside, um, it can be a really powerful new moon. It's really going to set our intentions in place, you know, for the next part of this year because we don't really get another really nice full moon. For a little while after that, we've got eclipses. Um, it's the Pisces new moon, which is a little bit more to do with letting go than intentions.
Mm.
Then we'll come around to the Aries and Taurus new moons, which are the more kind of springtime energy. But this is, Capricorn energy is very much about getting that structure in place.
Yeah.
And being realistic as well. Capricorn's nothing if not depressing and realistic.
Never. But I think it of course with the astrology we give you all the information, you choose to harness that as you see fit. But for those of you who would like a date for your diary, the 27th of January is when Mars and Pluto will be conjunct in Aquarius. Circle that date because I have written on my notes it equals power struggles and fights. So that could be personally and it could be collectively. Who knows? But go on.
Well, I was just going to say, on an esoteric level, Pluto is the higher will,
Mm-hmm.
the will of the soul, and Mars is the lower will, the will of the ego or personality style. So, often those two things are forced into alignment, which the human self doesn't like at all. So yeah, it's always a really powerful combination. People with that kind of energy in their chart are
Mm.
unstoppable. So it has to be harnessed and used in the highest way.
And the thought that just came into my head as well is don't just be looking at the obvious players. For power struggles and fights, it might come Aquarius from a quite unexpected place. That's what I'm kind of feeling, that something will kick off, that maybe we've been so focused on oil and other places that actually it kicks off somewhere else. That would be my.
Well, that's Aquarius, isn't it? You just never know. You just never know.
However, however, you've circled the 27th of January in your diaries, but the big juicy kind of movement is actually the day before, on the 26th, when Neptune moves into Aries, which, or I mean, we've done podcasts on this before, but we're going to talk about it again, because, and you were going to get sick of us talking about it, because Neptune in Aries is huge. Saturn and Neptune going into Aries and meeting is huge. So 26th January, 27th, depending where you are in the world, we are having Neptune going into Aries until May 2030. Okay, so quite a sizable chunk of the next few years. And Neptune in Aries, what can we say? She's here to wake us up from the illusion. I don't know where I want to start with the doom mongering first. I'll open it to you, Maria, before I start reading out lists of doom.
Mm. So Neptune has been in Pisces for 14 years.
Been a long 14 years.
It has. And I think that Neptune in the sign that she rules over is almost cast spells of glamour and enchantment over everybody, you know, in the Neptune ruled areas of our lives and in the collective. You know, it's the collective unconscious, the
Mm.
Pisces 12th house collective unconscious realm. So for me, when Neptune comes into Aries, especially with Saturn hot on the trail, it's really going to be this energy of there is no more hiding. So it's almost like what we've been seeing starting to happen already, isn't it? It's like now the corruption is blatant. Everyone knows what's going on. But they're carrying on anyway.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like there's no pretense over what is going on anymore. You know, it's there for everybody to see. Um, so again, you know, we come to this critical conjunction, this critical moment in the whole kind of history of the earth. I think the last time that they conjunct, I think Heather said, what was it, 4000 and something BC?
Thing incredibly Neolithic kind of period. Yeah.
Neolithic.
Heather, it was Heather
Mm,
Hensworth, wasn't it? We were both listening to. But yeah, it's
yeah.
prehistory essentially.
Mm. So you can think of, you know, that could have been the time when they were first starting to, you know, build the stone temples. Saturn is the stones.
Mm.
It could have been, you know, that moment, you know, where we had this massive, you know, crystallization of the new. And, you know, that's the potential that we could see again with this energy. You know, it's all about crystallizing that Neptunian higher spirituality into the physical realm. You know, Saturn creates the structure and container for Neptune. So it's a whole kind of galactic and cosmic reset point. And we were talking, you know, we were guiding people about how to find it in their own chart with star mapping
Mm.
at the weekend, because not the weekend, on Epiphany. I've lost track of what day it is in these kind of Epiphany days. I don't really know where I am. But we were, you know, saying wherever this is occurring in your chart, it's a massive rebirth.
Mm.
And it is for humanity as well. But again, you know, where are we going to direct this energy?
Yeah.
Where is this energy going to be directed? I think it's very important for those of us who are on the star priestess pathway, the priestess pathway in general, to really tune in on that day and anchor that energy in a very positive way. You know, really tuning into those higher octaves of these archetypes, because with Mars and Pluto, who is the ruler of Aries, almost conjunct at the same time, that's a very interesting ingress chart.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
So,
So,
and you do have a choice. I mean, first thing you write down when you're thinking about any planet crossing that silver wheel, 0 degrees of Aries, fertility, new beginnings, kind of, choosing to anchor in these frequencies of where we want to go to. But let's be honest, there will be a shadow side of Neptune in Aries, and one that I don't think we can move away from. So Maria was discussing that, since kind of COVID, we're on this sort of warlike footing. Essentially, we are deeply traumatized, it kind of personally and collectively, regardless of your beliefs. We've all suffered some form of kind of collective trauma. To be honest, Neptune in Aries generally does mean war and rebellions and uprisings and crusades and civil war, the breakup of empires and nations. I mean, I won't do the whole history this time round, but please let me do it again. But I really want to focus in on the last transit. So the last transit was 1861 to 1874. During that time, we saw the US Civil War, the abolition of slavery, the Civil Rights Act. So I'm just focusing a little bit on America there. But we've also seen in these transits the challenge of monarchy, the church, the state. And interestingly for us all, it was the rise of New Age spirituality. So Blavatsky was really big, the New Thought movement was really big, socialism was starting to rise. So that's coming full circle now. So going back to that Lilith in Sag as well, she's really ushering in that kind of guru, teacher, coming back to myself. Am I giving myself away to someone? It's just really, really fascinating, the potentials and the timelines that could be weaved in. But this is where, and without sounding really kind of love and lighty, we actually have a choice. What and where are you going to be putting your energy? Are you going to be putting it into war and crusades against another person, or are you going to be putting it into what you want to create and the new beginnings? And can those new beginnings happen without civil strife?
absolutely. And the powers that be, as we've said before, they understand astrology as well as we do.
Yeah.
So my vision would be for that day is that everybody gathers together if they can, makes their way to sacred sites, does does what they can to just really anchor in the energy on that day that we wish to actually crystallize.
Yeah,
So that would
absolutely.
be, everybody coming into their kind of Aries sovereignty,
Yeah.
because sovereign people cannot be controlled and manipulated. It's, like we've said many times, it's, what we're experiencing is a very different kind of war to what we might interpret as war from what we've
Mm.
seen historically. Then, a lot of us are very fortunate we're not having bombs dropped on us, but we are constantly assaulted on a psychic level. Our thoughts are constantly being manipulated and directed. So you take back your consciousness, that's the thing. I think Saturn, Neptune in Aries, you take back the power of your own consciousness. I
It
don't know
is
about you,
very
but
much.
sorry,
Go on.
I was just going to say recently, even, being on social media started to kind of make me feel a little bit nauseous. I can really feel a big energy shift happening where people are turning away from us.
I absolutely agree. And as I'm kind of listening to you and thinking about it, it's very much the war on the individual, the war on sovereignty, as opposed to an actual physical war per se. It's the frameworks, the structures and the strictures that prevent us from accessing our own sovereignty. I know James has seen this with the online acts in Australia. We've got stuff coming in on here. We've got freedom of speech, really being challenged here on so many different levels. We've got potentially additional drink driving legislation coming in, which basically means it'd be zero tolerance for drink driving. Good or bad, it doesn't matter, but again, it takes away the individual's freedom to choose. It's the tiny nibbling away. One man once called it a totalitarian tiptoe. And we're not just in a totalitarian tiptoe, let's be honest, the jackboot is coming down on us. And particularly for those of us who work quite on the astral level, we're doing a lot of work there to kind of hold the forces back for those people, dark magicians, whatever we want to call it, who understand astrology, the powers that be. So without, sounding like Mystic Meg, it really is a war against our own psyche, against our souls.
Absolutely. I used to love Mystic Meg. I wanted to be Mystic Meg when I was growing up. I thought she was fabulous with her. Do you remember her with the black bob and her crystal ball on the front of the newspaper?
Mm.
Um,
This week's lottery winner was never me.
iconic, absolutely iconic. But I think, you're very right. That is what's happening, isn't it? It's this kind of creeping, eroding of our sovereign rights, which, has been happening since COVID. That kind of fractured something in the human psyche. It disconnected us from each other. It made us fearful of each other. It made us fearful of, it brought everyone's fears of death up. It brought everyone's fears of having their freedom taken away. Whichever side of that you were on, there was a lot of fear,
Yeah.
a lot of fear. And I think we're now in a space that we maybe haven't been in before, in our generation, where now we know that our lives can be turned upside down, can be limited, can be restricted at, at somebody's whim at any moment, and we're on edge.
Yeah.
We're on edge, and that's what's making people very defensive and very reactive, because they're trying to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And
And
that's the
again,
shadow of Aries, actually, is that, I'm going to defend to the death what I believe is true.
doesn't resonate with me as an Aries at all. Proms, I've got myself into some scrapes about that in the past few years. But you're right, Aries has a dogmatic kind. It's a very Sag energy as well. It's this dogmatic. I will defend this until my last breath. And yes, there is some issues that we want to do that on, but sometimes we're just going to have to learn to, you know, the power of saying no. So all I want to say, we've got to learn the power of saying no, because when we say no collectively, that's when we have impact.
Absolutely. It's all about the boundaries we have for ourselves, isn't it? Saturn in Aries, in Pisces, there is no boundaries. And Neptune, has been very pivotal in that way. Neptune has been in Pisces, like I said, for 14 years. And we're just thinking back, actually, that's 2012, isn't it? Which is when we kind of had the last, end of the world kind of.
Married in 2012, might have been 2011, I can't remember.
Yeah, I was just thinking it was definitely, I'm sure Neptune had just gone into Pisces when we had that whole kind of 2012 thing. We were
The
entering the
Olympics.
new age. And, this kind of spirituality became really popular. And I
Yeah.
remember myself being sat in Avery Stone Circle with all of my crystals going. on that day with my lovely friend B, if B's listening. Um, we were having the best of times. Um, but I think, from that point, we started to have this take on spirituality, which was a little bit less, magical or occult, and a little bit more, unconditional love. See
Yeah.
everything with love, that's Neptune and Pisces, which has resulted in, a lot of us finding it hard to hold boundaries.
Mm.
And then Saturn's been coming through these past 2 years going, well, now look at the mess you've made. Look at where you've been giving all your energy and power away. Look at where you've been sacrificing yourself and sabotaging everything. Saturn being Saturn. And now they're coming into Aries. So it's like now, okay, now this is where we hold the line.
Yeah. And just
Yeah,
really thinking back
collectively and
to
personally. Yeah.
just really thinking back to 2012 and the Olympic opening ceremony, that is just burned in my mind now, knowing what we now know of what happened and the little kind of nurses dancing and the death coming. I was like,
Oh, yes, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Creepy.
mm,
Creepy,
creepy, very,
creepy.
very creepy. So no more creepy. But I mean, yeah, it's been a long time, and the delusion and illusion has been real. And I think a lot of us, and you and I have worked through a lot of this already, but are suffering some what I'd call sort of, don't want to call it light worker trauma, PTSD, whatever we want to call it, from, going down this completely forgiving, all loving, all encompassing, boundaryless route. Actually, we're kind of emerging out of the other side slightly frazzled and, worried for people who are still in that as well. But there's nothing that we can do, but it's about finding our own sovereignty. So if you found that you're moving away from aspects, just let that be. Don't cling to it, because it isn't going to serve you and it will burn you.
I think, one of my teachers always used to say to me, because I could very easily go into that place. We talked about this before. We both have Venus in Pisces, so it's really, that's an easy place for me to go, you know.
Mm.
And my teacher always used to say to me, "You're not Jesus. You're not here to save the world. You need to have an identity. You need to have a strong ego self in order to, function and manifest and, do good things,
Yeah,
because, you really limit yourself when you don't have boundaries. You limit the amount of work you can do because you're constantly burned out from trying to save everybody. So,
yeah.
yes,
And
the lessons of the Piscean era.
so strong boundaries, everybody. Big girl pants on and strong boundaries. It's going to be our kind of medicine. Just popping into my head now was Goddess saying, and what's coming up, ladies. So I guess as we kind of draw towards the end, she would you like to let everyone know about the 18th of January, the new moon in Capricorn?
Oh, yes. So under that Capricorn, Aquarian type new moon, we have an online afternoon session where you can come and learn more about goddess astrology and the silver spiral. And it's open to everybody. Of course, it's beneficial if you're interested in taking the full training, but if you want to come and just learn a little bit about your own chart and what it means to be doing this work in the Aquarian Aeon, the archetype of the star goddess, come and join us, because we believe that this is, it's really important that everybody understands astrology as we go into the zone of Aquarius, because Aquarius rules over astrology. So it's going to be one of the greatest kind of gifts you can have for understanding yourself, you know, seeing all these patterns, all of, you know, you can see us doing our live shadow work when we're chatting on the podcast. And we've seen all of that and we've worked through all of that because of astrology. So, you know, looking at your astrology, you can look at Lilith, what she's up to in your chart. You can look at the priestess you've been, the priestess you're becoming. Anyway, come and join us. It'll be fun. It'll be really
We'll
fun.
put It'll be really, really fun. So that's on the 18th of January at 12 p.m. UK time, so lunchtime, to hopefully fit in that. And that's generally at that time because it fits in with quite a few time zones around the world because we're very blessed with international students. And then I guess from both of us, we'd like to extend an invitation to you for the 21st of February. Maria and I are going to do a whole day online to anchor in that grand conjunction with Saturn and Neptune. There's going to be ritual, ceremony. I think we're going to do some planetary embodiment, um, place of reflection. It'll be really, really powerful. So we'd just love to invite you to join us for the whole day online, and then to be with like-minded people, to be in ceremony and ritual for that really potent and powerful day. So, and on the 20th of February, I'm just having a little think. If people are local to me, I might do something on the land, but online, everybody is welcome on both the 18th of January and also the 21st of February as well. Be amazing to see you there.
Absolutely. Next year with these incoming Aquarian and Arian energies, I think everything is going to accelerate. So, you know, come be with your tribe and, you know, use astrology to support you through these times because these archetypes have been honored and invoked since the beginning of time throughout all of the turnings of the aeons. So we're really recreating what our ancestors would have also been doing during these times. They have very strong visions of the priestesses in the stone temples, in Delphi, in the pyramids. You know, any major event like this would have been ritually honored, and that's what we want to really start to do again, I think.
I think that's our plan. Just to give you a sneaky kind of insight into our year ahead, there'll be there'll be more of these kind of meetings, both in person, but also we're offering them online because we can in the Aquarian Aeon to make sure that we are able to be of service to whoever wants to join us. So can't wait. So exciting, Maria. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you so much.
That's been really fun. And the storm is just about to blow in, I think.
It's gone really, really dark here. So until next time, we're both sending you so much love, starfire blessings, and we will be back soon. Take care.